It's shiny time.
Because my forehead is always so shiny.
No, me.
Oh, me too.
I'll be sparkling and glistening. So this video is actually a little bit different than most videos because I don't think I've actually reacted to a comment or responded to a comment in a while or ever from the standpoint of clarification. I don't think I've ever done that before.
Maybe, maybe not. Look, here comes Max. He's like, you're clearly recording. Time to make my cameo. Hello, Sir Ipu.
I don't think I've ever really clarified because there's a lot of reasons why I don't want to clarify. And I've got a theory, which is a debilitating theory, but basically is whoever asks the question
Doesn't really care about the answer.
probably will never see the video with the answer.
Oh, there's that part too.
But then it deprives others of receiving the answer to a question they've never asked that they might be interested in knowing the answer to. Mm-hmm. So also, sometimes I don't recognize the name of the user. So, you know, maybe it's something that I've discussed before that they're just new and they don't know because they haven't been around for a while.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of like, I guess maybe, I don't know, should I get into the habit of repeating myself because you just never know who's watching when or what they know or have heard or anything. Mm-hmm. So it's quite the conundrum.
It is. Very conundrum-y.
But this one in particular came from Richard, which is Uncle Frank. And Richard, Richard, I gotta tell you, this is not a video to like single anybody out or anything like that. Mm-mm. But this is a video of me talking to you as if you were standing right here in front of me.
Having a conversation.
Having a conversation.
Yeah.
And I guess I wish I had better stories like Patrick.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of stories. I mean, I guess I have stories. I just feel like no one really cares about my stories.
Depends on the people.
And so I screw myself in the beginning of even trying to tell the story because I assume nobody wants to hear it. And then I assume people will say, well, Kevin, get to the point. You're long-winded. So I'm more reactionary and responsive than forthcoming and
storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the reason maybe why is because I genuinely want to help people do better. Mm-hmm. So if I can answer the question, maybe the answer to the question will help people do better based on them asking it versus me telling them something that they didn't even really care about.
Makes sense. So
Richard, again, I'm only saying this as a friend, is very jaded by YouTube. Mm-hmm. YouTube did something to Richard. And I don't know exactly. Richard has explained.
I remember he lost some money.
But I don't know it exactly. You know? So I can't speak to that specifically. And Richard, if you or Uncle Frank want to make a video and share it, then let me know and maybe we can do a collab on a video. But Richard, you know, he comments on here. He's on live streams. He messages me, DMs me on Instagram. So I put up this video not too long ago. I think 6 or 7 people may have watched it, but it was about the World Economic Forum and their plan and their strategy, their push for their new agenda that everybody needs to pay attention to, which is about information. Mm-hmm. And as they describe it to be misinformation or disinformation. Mm-hmm. So in that video, I explain how YouTube is connected to that problem and why so many YouTubers are quitting. Mm-hmm. And part of that is because they're being forced to be silenced. Mm-hmm. Because some of the things that we would discuss, some of the things that we would tell the truth about, some of the things that we would uncover and share would be deemed by those in control and those in power as misinformation or disinformation because it goes against what they want you to think. Mm-hmm. And what they want you to believe. Mm-hmm.
Until you read the comment, I can't make any
There's
comments.
a lot of things running through my head about these situations of false truths. These situations of false truth. Is that school? False truths, and anyone who goes against it is in the wrong, even though they're entirely right. So there's a lot of it on TikTok. There's a lot of opinionated content on TikTok. I think the new trend now is eating the rich. And if you are not in that club, then anything you say against them that is logical and truthful is deemed to be misinformation and disinformation because you're not eating the rich. So I don't want to come across that way and try to pretend like what people provide to me that I don't agree with, that I don't align with as being misinformation or disinformation. It's just not my preference. It's just not my opinion. It's just not what I think. But it doesn't mean that it's gospel. So hopefully this sets some sort of precedence and stage for this comment that came through and what I think about it and why ultimately I didn't even mention it in my video. You want to read that?
So the comment says, so why didn't you point out that those who control YouTube and censor it do not control Rumble and that freedom of speech still exists there? I have not watched the video, but I can comment on this question because you were speaking on YouTube. You weren't talking about Rumble. You weren't talking about anything else, I'm assuming. So why would you bring that up?
So I brought it up from the standpoint of how much power we have as creators and YouTubers to connect and communicate with folks who watch these videos and engage in live streams and every other component of YouTube. And with that, I said, odds are that they have YouTube in their pocket. I'm paraphrasing here. They have YouTube in their pocket, so they have greater control over the algorithm. And besides that, they would probably want to control Twitter or X. Although they probably wouldn't be able to because Elon Musk doesn't mind telling somebody to go F themselves if he doesn't agree and like what they say. And I don't think that he would be too inclined to go along with this WEF push to create misinformation and disinformation out of things that are actually really true. You know, like from the standpoint of saying a man can be a birthing person, that's not true. I mean, that's not true. Like scientifically, it's not possible. And so their push would be, well, then you're providing misinformation and disinformation because you're telling men that they can't be birthing people. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
But Elon Musk would be like, nah, we're not gonna push that. But he would allow anybody to put anything on the platform. Which,
whether it's real or false.
Yeah.
So he's not going to push the false or the real, actually.
So that's, so I only mention that because he's not going to be easily persuaded to transform and shift Twitter into the trash that we have here on YouTube. So it was YouTube and it was Twitter, and I think I said I'm not going to mention Rumble, and I think I said I'm not going to mention Rumble, and the reason why I said that is because I didn't want to mention it, because I didn't think it was worth mentioning.
Yeah.
So before I dive into this, I have a list here pulled up from some website that I found just for talking points here, because they've come up with a list of the 14 best YouTube alternatives for content creators and businesses. So the goal here is to reach an audience, a massive audience, right? Because if you can reach an audience, then you can deliver a message. And depending on what message you deliver is going to have a huge impact on the the defenses. We were talking about going to war, basically, with the World Economic Forum. So obviously this here is quite possibly motivated the creation here is probably motivated by some sort of affiliate or paid promotion, trying to get people to other platforms. So the ranking system here, some of the suggestions may not necessarily be the greatest, but instead of me trying to rack my brain or possibly forget some, I just wanted to find a comprehensive list of alternatives to YouTube. And the reason why is because when you ask me, how come you don't mention Rumble? I then have to ask you, how come you don't mention Daily Motion?
How come you don't mention Instagram? How come you don't mention Facebook? How come you don't mention TikTok? How come you don't mention...
How come you don't mention Vimeo? Because honestly, I would think that Vimeo could probably be a better alternative to YouTube, seeing as how much longer it's been established and how free they are with the content that you post over there. Number 3 is Facebook. How come you don't mention Facebook? Number 4 is Twitter. We talked about Twitter. Number 5 is Instagram TV or whatever, Instagram. How come you don't mention Instagram? Number 6 is DTube. Never heard of it. How come you don't mention that? Number 7 is Wistia. Again, never heard of it. How come you don't mention it? 8 is Spotlighter, formerly VooPlayer. We've got 9, Bright Cove. We've got 10 as Sprout Video, 11 as WordPress. We've got 12 as Odyssey. We've got 13 as Bird TV and 14 as Utreon. And these lists aren't even really concisive because other lists include BitChute and Rumble and these other platforms. None of them mention Telegram. So the short answer after the long explanation, which I just like to do, is that I don't mention them because they're not worth mentioning. And they're not worth mentioning because they don't have enough reach to get connected to enough people to have any meaningful impact on effective communication against a opposing force.
Well then, and to be 100% transparent, obviously, honestly, for anybody who looks at YouTube as a business, Rumble is not going to be anywhere near what YouTube as a business would pay. So there's that as well. You can't interact the same. You don't get the same reach. You can't search the same way. You don't get paid the same. You don't have numerous options on Rumble that you have on YouTube and other places. So I can see why some people don't like it. But then he said, why didn't you mention Rumble for free speech and everything like that? How do you know there's free speech? Just because you were able to see a video or two that you agreed with doesn't mean that other videos are not being withheld. Maybe the ones you don't agree with are the ones being withheld. If there's free speech for some, it doesn't mean there's free speech for all. So if this platform gives free speech to this side, maybe the other platform gives free speech to that side, but are either platforms actually giving free speech to every single content creator, every single person? The answer is definitely going to be no. Not both platforms will have free speech for everybody. But also, if you've gone to Rumble, you know that when you upload a video, it says, hey, are you also uploading this to YouTube? Because if you are, we can't monetize it over here, which leads me to believe that somewhere all the way up the chain, those two things are still being pulled by the same puppet master at the end of the day. Just because it may look separate, there's still the same head honcho, head pin, whatever you want to call it, at the very top controlling it. That's my thought. I don't 100% know that for sure.
And you brought up a really great and valid point. I'm going to reread Richard's comment that says, so why didn't you point out that those who control YouTube and censor it do not control Rumble and that freedom of speech still exists there? So, as I've mentioned before, everything you see is fake and everything you hear is a lie. And if everything you see and everything you hear is a fake and a lie, then that ultimately becomes the truth. And as long as you speak that, then you have freedom of speech. So even on YouTube, after it gets completely and totally obliterated by this ridiculous nonsense that's happening, and I'm not going to say it's completely divided here in this country. This is global. This is worldwide. You'll still have the freedom of speech if you so choose to align with their information as they deem yours misinformation or disinformation.
There you go.
And they're not restricting your freedom of speech here. They're only suppressing your reach. They're only enticing you and encouraging you and motivating you to quit and give up, or perhaps maybe change your tune or whatever it may be, but you're still free to say whatever you want. Richard, you're free to say what you want. You say it in the comments. You can start another channel, which you already have a channel. You got Uncle Frank. You are free to do whatever you want. Now, they are also free to do whatever they want. And it is their sandbox. These are their toys, and they can tell you to pound sand, no pun intended there. But the freedom still exists. The problem is is inherently that, and the freedom for people to provide false information, misinformation, and disinformation as truth, especially if it aligns with the overall global agenda of these elitists and what they want to be spread, which is ultimately gaining traction and taking over in abundance of impressions and views and reach on all social media networks for the most part, because I can tell you right now, even Twitter folks are being snowed by a lot of this fake news and generative AI and, clever editing and old news headlines with no dates and, strategically and cleverly curated transcripts to say true things in a certain order that aren't necessarily true. Especially from the standpoint that people are listening more in a podcast format than watching. So they can't actually see the context of the information that's being delivered.
Yeah. Ended as a question?
I'm the greatest YouTuber ever? Thanks, Richard.